Hi guys, welcome to Algebra 2 lesson 3.5. We're going to go fairly quickly because I have a limited amount of video time. So we are going to be solving quadratic equations by completing the square. And so completing the square is the method, the name of the method that we're going to learn today, but we have already learned a few of the things leading up to this in the previous lesson. In order to use completing the square, you add a number to both sides of the equation to make one side a perfect square trinomial. If you're taking notes, you can just write these down on paper and we'll get those later. So example of a perfect square trinomial is x squared plus 10x plus 25. So you saw those before, and what we were doing was factoring them. And that's going to be kind of something that's going to help us out today a little bit. Notice when it's a perfect square trinomial, the front is a perfect square, back is a perfect square, and the middle is twice the square root of those two perfect squares. X and 5 times 2 is 10x. So if you took this and cut it in half and then squared it, you get 25. So we're going to look at creating perfect square trinomials by figuring out what that number on the end should be. So here's an example on the next page. We have x squared plus 6x. So how do we figure out what goes in that spot? Well, my b number is 6 because it's in the b location, the second spot. We're going to take that 6 and divide it by 2, which is 3. And then we square that number, which is 9. So if we put a 9 right here, we would have a perfect square trinomial. The directions say to find the perfect square trinomial. So we're going to write x squared plus 6x plus 9 and factor it. So if we factor this, what multiplies by 9 and adds up to 6 is x plus 3 and x plus 3. So instead of writing it twice, I'm going to use the little squared now, and that's going to help us out. So over here on the right-hand side, we have x squared plus 3x. So my b number is a 3. I'm going to do exactly the same thing to it. I'm going to take 3 divided by 2 and square that answer. But this time, 3 divided by 2 is not a nice number. So I would just reduce that fraction, which it is. So I'm going to leave it as 3 squared and just square the top, which is 9, and the bottom, which is 4. I know you might be tempted to turn that into 1.5 and square it and get an answer of 2.25. But later on, we're going to do some stuff that the fraction is definitely going to be a better way to go. So let's write our answer down here. X squared plus 3x plus 9/4. It looks bad, but when we go to factor it, well, we kind of figured out what that thing was, because if you take 3 and divide it by 2, that's 3 halves. So half of that number squared is 9/4. So if I put x plus 3 halves squared, that will actually be the factor of that perfect square trinomial. And then we'll use that in the future problems. So far we haven't actually solved by completing the square yet. We're just kind of figuring out how to figure out what that number is that will go in this special spot right here on the end. If you want to go back up to the top of the page where that c is, you're going to write b divided by 2 squared. And I'll go back in the next video and show you how to actually solve using completing the square.